press play. He's the voice of the intersection of marketing, tech, and popular culture. Thinking is his commodity. DJ, data punk, stylish sock collector, and author of the book Disruptive Marketing. Jeffrey Cologne is your host of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds.
It's another episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. I'm your host, Jeffrey Cologne, broadcasting live from the campus of Microsoft in Redmond, Washington. Hope you had a good week. On this week's episode 39, we're going to ask the question if live video streaming is the new ad format. Also, a quick glance at some highlights from South by Southwest, as well as some highlights for Miami Music Week. And also, we are going to take a look at one of the world's most innovative companies, looking at how they're using data. All that and more on this week's Disruptive FM. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. We're at Disruptive FM. And of course, you can follow me personally on Twitter at DJGEOFFE. Of course, in our Read, Write, Remix world, we want you to participate in the conversation. Don't just follow it. Use hashtag DisruptiveFM. So this past week, a lot of different media outlets really active using live video streaming from South by Southwest. I tuned into Mashable's coverage. Really awesome to see this. One of the interesting tidbits is beyond media using these tools, how do brands take this direct to customers? So there is a lot of possibility here. I think this is one of the reasons why Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook really is putting a heavy emphasis on live video streaming moving forward, because the moments that we are able to participate in, whether in real time or in on-demand time, presents an opportunity for a unique storytelling venture for individuals as well as companies, small and large in size. So it'll be interesting to see if this becomes the new ad format. And what we mean by that isn't the way of thinking about formats in terms of, hey, we need a 420 by 600 banner size. But really, is this something that storytellers and story makers use to their advantage, whether they're on the brand marketing level or they're on the individual level? As we know, more and more of us are turning to personal brands, people who are individuals and sole proprietors, those who are experts in an area, really to gain information. And it's really interesting to see how this will continue to shape in the DIY or do-it-yourself economy. I think what's really fascinating about live streaming is that it has a history. It has a history going back to 2008 when Facebook actually live streamed the presidential inauguration of Barack Obama, for those who can remember. I also think what's interesting is there was a failure from a company, a startup that Sean Fanning and Sean Parker had run called Airtime, where you had an individual channel and you could broadcast different things to other people who were on that network. That never worked out very well. However, I think that failure has actually been pivoted into Facebook's live streaming model. And I could see in the next 2 years, and I'm quoting Julian Mitchell, who is a very strategic mind when it comes to brand content marketing. He thinks we'll actually all have our own individual channels moving forward in the next couple of years. And I actually think that's what Facebook is trying to do by planting seeds now. Of course, you can broadcast on Facebook using their Facebook Mentions app. You can designate that to an individual profile or a brand page. It'll be interesting to see as this rolls out to more users how people utilize this in a creative manner, especially the marketing community. And of course, we can't forget Periscope. Even though the bandwidth isn't as large or the reach isn't as large, especially from some of the tests that we ran, I think they still are in the game in terms of how they pivot and use that moving forward for real-time news and information on Twitter. So instead of pre-roll and audience-targeted content that we are so familiar with when it comes to the video format, I think we're really going to see a lot more branded storytelling experiences moving forward. And this is going to open up a whole new area for marketers to explore in terms of how they reach customers, not based on audience-targeted content, but really experiential marketing content. So South by Southwest was this past week, and some of the big highlights that we saw there, of course, lots of talk about augmented reality and virtual reality and artificial intelligence, of course, discussions on robots and drones and the post-work economy. There is a fascinating world going on this week that I think a lot of brand marketers don't pay attention to, and they should. And I say this coming from the music industry from back in the day. And that's Miami Music Week. And of course, some of the best innovation in music is taking place in Miami. And this has been going on for 30 plus years in the month of March. And I think we have to follow what might be released there in terms of new communication platforms on how DJs connect with their audience. So a couple of years ago, it was interesting to see how Richie Houghton would tweet live based on an API that he had created. If he was playing a particular track, it would let his followers know what that track was in real time. So they didn't have to necessarily go to a DJ booth they couldn't get into at these large festivals and ask what those songs were. They could just follow a Twitter feed to find out what that is. That's the beauty of a lot of this digital, data-centric music synchronization, if you want to think about it in that respect. Of course, if you're spinning vinyl, you have to go look at the turntables to see what's actually playing or ask someone. But I think we might see some other forms of connection this week and might see some interesting brand integrations and some interesting things that artists are doing down there. And I think we have to continue to pay attention to that. I think the majority of the brand marketing world doesn't pay attention to Miami like they should. It is a multi-ethnic gathering of a lot of different people from around the world. And I think it allows brand marketers to really figure out how to market to consumers. Whereas South by Southwest is still an event that you go to sort of figure out what the new technology is going to be and to talk to other marketers. In a customer-centric world, I still think that you want to be in a place where you can do customer-facing work, and I think that's still Miami, even though it hasn't really been utilized by too many marketers. The world's most innovative companies. I like to pay attention to the things that companies are doing out there, and one of them, speaking of music, is Spotify. We've talked a lot about what they're doing and how they're utilizing data to change a traditional industry. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating is they have a feature that's called Found Them First. And this reminds me of how I have discussions with friends on, hey, I discovered this band in this particular year and they were really awesome. Well, what Spotify actually allows users to do is put a timestamp on the fact that they listen to a particular artist. So down the line, let's say in 5 years' time, if that band blows up, someone could say, hey, I actually discovered that band in 2016. And you can note here, based on that time and date stamp, on when I actually listened to them. In the old days, you couldn't do that. Because if I said, hey, I discovered this particular artist back in 1998, people would just say, well, prove it to me. You had no digital footprint necessarily that you could use to exercise that right that you basically had discovered those artists first. This is really interesting. I think this ties into the reputation economics zeitgeist that we see, because a lot of people do take pride in that they are early adopters. So there is a potential for Spotify to own another space, and it'll be interesting to see as we move more into a curated world where there is a ton of different information, how we use people again beyond just algorithms when it comes to discovering new things. Algorithms are wonderful, but we still really rely heavily on people and what they say for our referral system. Make sure you tweet to us at Disruptive FM. Let us know who you'd like on the show. We got a lot of guests lined up over the next couple of weeks. Al Pittampali, who's author of Persuadable, will be on our show. Really good book you need to check out. Also, Alex Moazed from Applico. He's also written a book this past year about platforms. We're looking forward to having him. I'm trying to also get Jamie Gutfreund, the CMO of Wonderman, on the show. She wrote a wonderful piece about personalization in the most recent advertising age. Also, Vasanthi Chandra, who is the founder of Rewards Pay. Really looking forward to having her on the show because she's going to answer a lot of questions about the Internet of Things and how that intersects with marketing. And then finally, I'm trying to get my old mentor on the show, Gemma Craven of McCann, who's going to talk about all things social and mobile. And we used to do a show way back in the day, so it's always good to have Gemma on. Finally, I have my speaking schedule up. If you want to check it out at jeffreycolon.net/speaking. I'm at a number of different places. April 1st, I'm back at my alma mater, Lehigh University, to talk about the Data X initiative. Also, at the end of April at Digital Now in Orlando, Florida. I'm in Hamburg, Germany in May. And then a bunch of different places in June. New York City twice. Also Denver. And a trip to Minneapolis and Portland planned for July. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Disruptive FM. Again, we're here every Friday with a new episode, broadcasting live from the campus of Microsoft in Redmond, Washington. I'm your host, Jeffrey Colon. Don't forget, pre-order my book, Disruptive Marketing, What Growth Hackers, Data Punks, and Other Hybrid Thinkers Can Teach Us About Navigating the New Normal. That's out August 15th, 2016 on Amacom Books. You can pre-order it now on Amazon.
You've been listening to an episode of Disruptive FM, the marketing podcast for eccentric minds. Remember to subscribe to the show on iTunes. Purchase a copy of Jeffrey's latest book, Disruptive Marketing, on Kindle, hardcover and audio. Signing off from the city of Seattle. Press pause.